Welcome again. This is the concluding segment. We've been talking about taxes, tax preparation, and how you, as a client or a television viewer, can be more astute, more sophisticated in preparing taxes so as ultimately to benefit yourself by saving money. My guests have been two men, local men, who are prominent in the tax field. Both are CPAs. On my right is Victor Illonardo, who's a CPA, a member of the State CPA Society and managing partner of his own firm in Ridgefield. And on his right is David Millstein, resident of Fort Lee, and a partner in the Newark office of Coopers & Lybrand. After 3 weeks, fellas, I really got that introduction.
You have it fine.
Right. I would like to talk about how to prepare and how to get the data and the documents together for the accountant. But David, when we were talking just before coming on air, you mentioned that you have a concern and an interest in this whole area, quotation marks, loopholes.
It's when I hear people refer to other people getting away, finding loopholes and beating the system that I think requires a response on my part, as well as others in the profession. The tax code I find to be a abnormally fantastic document. I think it's written very well. It's a very complex document, clearly.
Yeah, but it's also a document that's always in change.
Well, that's the beauty of it. There are political, social, and economic reasons for the provisions in the Internal Revenue Code. They're there for reasons.
Yeah, and I always get the feeling that the tax code is as much a code to influence behavior as anything else, as to generate capital. It's got both functions.
It does. It's a revenue raiser as well as an economic channeler. Okay, hopefully people will go into economic ventures. I think you're seeing that more in the tax shelter area now. There's a desire on the part of Congress to have those people who are seeking ways, and legitimate ways, of reducing or deferring their taxes to channel those investments to more economic type of investments. Reason being because of the assumed abuses in the past.
But that's also the reason we have an investment tax credit. Isn't that the ideal example of what you're talking about?
Surely. That plus the new ACRS depreciation provisions.
What is ACRS?
Accelerated Cost Recovery System. It took about 2 months to get that down.
We'll stay with the initials.
Okay. There are economic incentives in the Internal Revenue Code, just as there are provisions not only affecting the corporation but individuals too. The deduction for home mortgage interest was clearly designed to
stimulate home purchases.
Sure, home purchases, which fosters and
the
stimulates the real estate industry, which has more people working, etc.
Buys furniture and sells carpeting,
all the way down.
Venetian blinds, and shrubbery.
Right. But the phrase loopholes, I really think is misplaced. I think there are tax incentives in the code, and I think because they are there, and because there are reasons for them, that individuals who are able to should take advantage of them. And there's nothing wrong with it, and to the extent we can help and channel our clients into those types of investments, I think we are doing a service to them as well as to the economy in the long run.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
You know, I agree with what Dave has said about the the interpretation or the misinterpretation people have about loopholes. I think he explained that very well, and I agree with that. But he is the first one that I have heard that said that it's a well-written document. I do not agree with that.
That's complex, but well written.
Okay, but the reason I say that is that the sections are written, and then there's regulations, and then there's interpretations to those regulations. But let's go on to something else. I think your point is well taken, and I think I'm glad that we cleared up the air about how both of us feel about that loose word that's used, loopholes.
Well, in effect, I think both of you rightfully feel that the loophole is really an opportunity which comes from a very legitimate need or a very legitimate
because
segment by Congress.
The law allows it, and using that word loophole, I believe some individuals get the wrong idea that some taxpayers have advantages over others, and that's not the case.
I understand that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have to pause for an announcement for just a moment. Stay with us, please. We're concluding now with our segment. In the next few minutes, we'll conclude our segment on tax planning, income tax preparation with David Millstein of Fort Lee and Victor Illonardo of Leonia. Fellows, understandably, I can feel where some people view the loophole and the accountant working with the loophole as kind of a nefarious occupation or a dirty word. But in effect, these are very valid kinds of functions to create or stimulate economic behavior. I would think that you must find it, and I know people continually call our office just before tax time, what did I trade a certain stock at? What did I pay for it? What did I sell it at? And it requires all kinds of digging. It must be difficult for the average practitioner in terms of the way the client comes to him, either prepared or ill-prepared.
Yeah, the most difficult part of it is when they don't give you the information at all, or after the return is completed, they find the information.
Now,
Or you can gather the information. Suppose last year they reported GM stock as being a dividend. And when they give you the 1099s for this year, it doesn't appear any longer. Well, something happened to it. They either gifted or they sold the stock. And when you raise that question, they says, that's right, I did sell it. Now they have to give you the buy and sell slip. It seems to me, as far as gathering information, there's two major categories. There's gross income and there's expenses. And if they can just get a file system and put all the gross income items in one file and then the expense items in another file, then you can break that file down to other areas, to wages, dividend income, interest income, anything that has to do with security transactions, anything that has to do with pensions, and miscellaneous income. And then you set up your other expense file as far as the medical expenses, your interest expense, tax expense. You can get all of this information from your checkbook. And as you're making up the check, if it has any tax significance, you should indicate with a TAX that it's a tax item. And then you can identify it as being a medical interest, or that's a lead for most taxpayers, you know, the smaller taxpayer that goes through this problem all the time.
I think a good idea would be for a taxpayer, when he gets back his tax return, to really study it and see what happened with the information he gave his accountant. Then going forward, he will have a better feel for where this information flows into the return. I suggest that as far as keeping records, just look at the return. Go down, you know, the pages or line items and start accumulating information relative to those particular line items, whether it's wages, whether it's dividends, whether it's interest, and keep them separate that way.
I found that people now are become more attuned to the taxes. In the early stages of my career, individuals were coming to us because they did not want to have anything to do with the tax return. It was a fear with some of them, so that it became difficult for them to study it. But but it's necessary in order to minimize your taxes. You've got to be part of understanding what goes on at tax form, and you have to become part of understanding the savings that can be obtained. There's time and effort and money.
You've got to be part of the process.
You've got to be.
Plus, the more time we spend, the more it's going to cost the client. So
I was wondering that if the client
pay.
is more efficient, doesn't he save money by using less of the accountant's time?
Absolutely. Of course, our time is deductible.
Fellas, your time is deductible and our time has expired.
And by the way, I have to go back to work tonight.
Oh, you do? Okay, you're dismissed. We finished the final segment of the Money Corner. Thank you for being with us, and thank you so much, Dave Millstein and Vic Illonardo, for being my guest.
having us.
I'll see you here on the Money Corner next week. Have a good week.